J.A. Aurora Legends. Golden Hearts. Number 4. New Year, New Fear. Written and narrated by T.S. Proart. The skeletal framework of Little Salvaheim clawed at the inky sky. It was still far from finished, a collection of half-built cabins and timber skeletons standing wearily in the snowy grounds. Gentle flakes drifted down, blanketing the town in a layer of pristine white, yet the air thrummed with warmth and life. It was still New Year's Eve, 11 o'clock, and within the heart of the unfinished settlement, the Spark survivors celebrated. The celebration was twofold, a welcome to the promise of the coming year, as well as a joyful reunion. Campfires blazed, casting dancing shadows on the unfinished walls and illuminating the faces of those who had gathered. Some sparks danced around the flames, their laughter echoing in the crisp night air. Others sat at makeshift tables, sharing stories and sipping on a mysterious liquor, the color of twilight, a vibrant, almost unnatural hue of blue and purple. Others simply chatted, their voices a comforting murmur against the backdrop of crackling fires. Several vehicles belonging to the Earthlings Jada had invited were scattered around the perimeter, their headlights providing additional illumination and their open trunks serving as impromptu gathering spaces. Music, a blend of human and spark melodies, pulsed softly from hidden speakers, weaving a tapestry of sound that was both familiar and strangely alien. Leaning against the wall of his and Jaida's unfinished cabin, Void and his brother Kor stood shoulder to shoulder, each holding a can of soda, their gazes drawn to the scene unfolding before them. A gentle smile played on Void's lips as he watched his wife, Jaida, interact with the newly arrived Sparks, their infant son, Jay, cradled in her arms. Beside her, Coco Ito was in her element, welcoming the new arrivals with open arms, even attempting a lively dance with the Spark whose features resembled a frog. Void's eyes scanned the crowd, taking in the sight of Ellie and her father Matthew, Knock and Cott, Muck and Taylor, all mingling and sharing greets and stories, even when Nona had brought Andy along for whatever reason. However, Sarv and Tucker were unable to make it, due to service reasons, as all Jaida had said to the Spark. "Does any of this feel real to you?" Void asked, taking a long sip from his can. Kor echoed his question, shaking his head slightly. "Nope." It was almost unbelievable. After so much loss and hardship, life, in a way, had been restored to how it was, how it should have always been. Though their numbers were still a fraction of what they once were, the image of his people rebuilding, together, filled them with a profound sense of hope. "How's Jay been doing?" Kor asked, nodding towards Void's son, who was currently being awkwardly held by the cheetah-looking Spark, who had a wide, almost bewildered smile on her face. "He's been alright, doing baby stuff, crying, pooping, you know how it is," Void replied, a hint of amusement in his voice. Kor chuckled softly, then shifted his gaze to his girlfriend, Sika, who was sharing a meal with their daughter, Joby, by the firelight in the distance. A flicker of concern then crossed his features. "How's Joby been since, Void asked, the lingering trauma left by Matira hanging heavy in the air. Kor sighed, uneasy. "Can't say it's been easy. Joby's been having nightmares. Claims that she still feels her grandma hurting her." He paused, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "She's been questioning herself too. She asked me the other day if she was actually a real Spark. Of course, I told her yes, but I think the fact that she's a product of science is, I think it's starting to get to her. And I'm worried about that." Void reached out, resting a reassuring hand on Kor's shoulder. I can't say I blame her. Having all that happen at such a young age, you know? He hesitated, then added, I hate to say it, but I understand the feeling of uncertainty at that point in life. He met his brother's gaze then. If you want, I can try and talk to her. Core considered the offer, the worry lines etching deeply around his eyes. If it gets worse, I will. She really loves you, Void. I think you might be the family favorite. He managed a weak smile. Then, Joby and Sika caught their eyes and waved enthusiastically. The brothers waved back, the simple gesture a reminder of the family they had fought so hard to protect, and the tentative hope that, together, they could heal. Over on the other half of the party, Jida beamed, cradling Jay close to her chest. Isn't he just the cutest little thing? She exclaimed, her gaze fixed upon the Sparkette who had just been holding him moments before. The cheetah Sparkette, a young woman with brown eyes, a tail, and a spot pattern, simply nodded, a faint blush rising on her cheeks. Absolutely adorable, she said before sticking out her tongue and making Jay giggle. Seems like all sparks agree, Miss Novison, a voice said, pulling Jida's attention away from her son. Astrophel was approaching, his frame radiating a quiet confidence. He gestured towards the Sparkette. This is Chi-Chi. As you can see, she's a sweetheart, the one with the blade stated, as several capybaras waddled past them. Oh, gotcha. Astrophel, right? I don't think we've properly met. Jida greeted, extending her hand with a warm smile. Nodding, the Spark returned the gesture. His grip was firm and reassuring. That's correct, Astrophel replied, his expression mirroring her friendly tone. He then gestured to the pair that had been beside him. This here's my partner Stella, and my good friend Greg, but we just call him Greg for short. Jida shook hands with Stella first. Pleasure to meet you, Stella said softly, a gentle smile forever on her lips. Her eyes held a kindness that Jida immediately found comforting. Then came Greg. What's up, hothead? Literally, your hair looks like a ball of fire, he roared, his voice loud and booming, filling the space around them. Jida couldn't help but laugh. His enthusiastic greeting was undeniably amusing. Oh, you bet it is, Jida chuckled, running a hand through her fiery curled hair. What worlds are you guys from? She then asked, her curiosity piqued by the diverse group. Well, I'm from a different Earth to this one, Stella explained, intertwining her fingers with Astrophel's. But I primarily stay with Astrophel. As you can tell, we're rather close. Her hand lingered on his, and then her other unconsciously rested on her stomach. Jida noticed the slight yet noticeable baby bump beneath her red coat. Oh, I get you. Jida said, catching a knowing wink from Stella. Greg, seemingly oblivious to the subtle exchange, puffed out his chest. Me? I'm from the planet Zartak. All you need to know about me is that I'm down for anything. Just watch the shades, Toots. He announced, striking a mighty pose. The sharp sunglasses perched on his head added to the comical effect, making Jida laugh again. I like your friend here. He reminds me of my younger self. Jida again chuckled, shifting Jay slightly in her arms. As if on cue, other sparks, drawn by the laughter and vibrant energy of Jida and her newfound acquaintances, began to drift closer, eager to join the conversation. Nearby and around a campfire, Nox stared at the being before him, a unique spark unlike any of the others he has seen before. So, you're like, He trailed off, struggling to find the right words to describe the being made almost entirely out of water. The spark shimmered and rippled. His body consisted solely of clear, cool liquid, forming two articulated hands. Their blue head bobbled energetically atop what looked like a flexible spout of water that served as a neck. "Name's Splash, and I'm just a guy who loves the waves," Splash announced, raising his water hands in a gesture of enthusiasm that sent tiny droplets flying. Cot, ever the enthusiastic one, bounced on his heels beside his fellow flipside, Taylor. "Oh, hell yeah! Love me some fellow waterheads," he exclaimed, a wide grin splitting his face. Taylor, whose own head was perpetually upside down, simply nodded in agreement. "I'm still confused about this whole alien thing," Taylor confessed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Still just trying to wrap my head around the fact that my buddy over there is the Blue Bullet." He gestured, vaguely in a direction towards Void, who was now playing with Joby. Muck, who was leaning against a wooden wall, took a long swig from a bottle filled with the unknown alcohol. "I ain't all that surprised. I kinda suspected it," he mumbled, his words slightly slurred. The conversation, however, was interrupted by Matthew, who approached Knock with a respectful, almost formal demeanor. "Hello, Mr. Rogers," he greeted. "Officer Sangston," Knock replied, a barely perceptible spark of glee crackling around him. Before continuing on, Matthew glanced towards his daughter, Ellie, who was engrossed in a conversation with Kronos. "I heard you're planning on running for mayor after New Year's. Is that true?" Knock nodded. "That's the plan. This city has found my favor after the location stations were a success. So I'm thinking maybe I could provide real change if I'm in that kind of position." As he spoke, a capybara, seemingly out of nowhere, began to chew on the hem of his pants. A flicker of annoyance crossed Knock's face, quickly replaced by a practiced politician's smile. "Well, after all the tires you've fixed on my car, let's just say you have my vote," Matthew said with a genuine smile. Suddenly, a commotion erupted nearby. Cot, apparently irresistible to the local wildlife, was being completely swarmed by a horde of capybaras. One particularly large rodent carried the smaller Spark on its back, like a majestic steed. Captrap was his name. "Oh, sorry!" The Spark riding the capybara called out apologetically. A muffled voice, barely audible beneath the furry pile, replied, "It's all good. I'm in heaven." Only a thumbs-up gesture, protruding from the mountain of capybaras, confirmed that Cot was in fact enjoying the bizarre situation. The moonshine from above cast long shadows across the mossy bank of the nearby water stream, painting the scene in hues of white and lavender. Harmony and Lee sat shoulder to shoulder, the gentle murmur of the waves a soothing backdrop to their quiet camaraderie. They took turns finding flat stones and sending them skimming across the surface, each skip a little victory. Their target, or rather the object of their playful avoidance, was a mermaid-like Spark, the one who danced and splashed in the current. She seemed to revel in their attempts to miss it, her ethereal form shimmering with mischievous glee. Lee sighed contentedly, the sound light and airy. "You know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "things haven't felt this peaceful in a hot minute. My mind feels so clear." A genuine smile graced her lips, crinkling the corners of her eyes. She unconsciously snuggled deeper into the oversized sweater she wore, a garment Void had lent her earlier. Harmony watched her, a warmth spreading through her chest. She knew the turmoil Lee had been battling, the anxieties that had clouded her bright spirit. "Told you talking would make things easier," Harmony replied, a teasing tilt in her voice. "I haven't seen you this happy in a long time." She punctuated her statement with another rock toss defiantly into the stream. It skipped 3 times before sinking in a soft plop. Lee turned her head, her gaze soft and appreciative. "All thanks to you for pushing me on," she said, her voice laced with sincerity. She then tilted her head to the side, an invitation, and gently rested it on Harmony's shoulder. The unexpected contact sent a jolt through Harmony. a blush blooming instantly on her cheeks. She swallowed, trying to quell the sudden flutter in her stomach. Without conscious thought, she reciprocated the gesture, carefully leaning her head atop Lee's. The strands of Harmony's hair tickled at Lee's cheeks, carrying the faint scent of wildflowers. Andy crunched thoughtfully on their pickle, the sour tang doing little to soothe their growing unease. Sparks, the beings of pure energy and unpredictable personalities, buzzed around them like hyperactive fireflies. They glanced at Winona, her rosy cheeks flushed from the heat of a nearby bonfire, and sighed. "Winona," they began, carefully choosing their words. "Look, I appreciate you wanting to keep me included in all that, but why do you really keep bringing me to these, They began, eyeing down the giant penguin-colored spark as the spider-akin one bounced on his belly with glee. "Why do you really bring me into the heat of things I feel like I shouldn't be a part of?" Winona shrugged, her winter coat billowing in the gentle but insistent wind. "Because I think you're fun to hang around. I think you get along with everyone if you just, interacted with them." She bumped their shoulder playfully. "Besides, it's not like you were planning on doing anything besides sleep for New Year's," she finished. "Because I like sleeping," Andy mumbled, taking another less enthusiastic bite of their pickle. Their argument was suddenly interrupted, though, by a blur of orange and the whirring sound of wheels. "Hey, nerds! Enjoying the party?" A Sparkette, wearing fiery orange goggles, red flame tattoos snaking across her arms, and wheels instead for feet, zipped around them in a tight circle. "Oh, yeah, we're fine, Miss, Winona trailed off, searching for a name. "Jaden's the name. Don't hesitate to ask if you need something," Jaden declared with a grin, then revved her feet and blasted off towards a group huddled around a particularly large bonfire. Andy watched her disappear, their face a mask of bewildered resignation. "See, that's what I'm talking about. I don't get this stuff. I feel like I'm just here for the sake of being here," they said to Winona with a slump, the silence punctuated only by the crackling fire and the distant laughter of other sparks. "Again, just try and reach out," Winona insisted, nudging them. Look at her beside us." Andy followed Winona's gaze. Sitting a few feet away, practically melting into the shadows, was a Sparkette unlike any they had seen so far. She was draped in a white robe, patched with vibrant purple lines. Her skin was a delicate pink, and tiny, pointed feet peeked out from under the hem of her dress. Atop her head sat a crown of woven green flowers, framing gentle, almost timid eyes, one a milky white, the other a shimmering lavender. 3 delicately curving horns adorned the sides of her head and forehead, as well, as she stared silently into the fire. "Go on, make an alien friend," Winona beckoned encouragingly, then, perhaps a little too enthusiastically, gave Andy a shove. They stumbled, their shoulder connecting awkwardly with the Sparkette's. She flinched, her eyes widening and snapping down to the bullhorn who had just invaded her personal space. The two stared at each other for a long, excruciating moment, the Sparkette resembling nothing so much as a deer caught in headlights. "Ugh, fine," Andy grumbled, forcing themselves to extend a begrudging hand. "Hi, I'm Andy. What's your name?" The Sparkette remained frozen, her lavender eye flickering nervously. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. Then, with a quiet shuffle and a barely perceptible movement, she got to her feet and walked away, disappearing into the swirling crowd of sparks. Winona winced, an embarrassed flush creeping up her neck. Okay, maybe we should start off less, immediate." Andy, their face a mask of utter frustration, slapped their forehead. Another fire crackled merrily, casting dancing shadows on the faces of 6 sparks gathered around it. They were a picture of weary contentment, their bodies aching from a day spent constructing the foundations of what they hoped would be a new home, a new beginning. Cinder, the tallest of the Sparkettes, with a hardened gaze, felt it softened by the flickering flames, while raising a bottle of their people's own potent brew, a rare, almost imperceptible smile touching her lips. "You know," she said, her eyes sweeping across the faces of her crew, "am I the only one feeling a sense of peace?" Gizmo, the shortest Sparkette, a little engineer with big welding goggles, nodded in agreement. "I was beginning to think the same thing. After years of taking on straining job requests, I'm more than willing to accept a peaceful few years." A chorus of murmurs rippled through the group. Turbine, a medic spark, reached one of his back-clawed hands to stoke the flames before them. "Matira knows we need that," he said aloud, but in a very awkward manner of speaking. "What about you, Voltage? Feeling anything new?" Turbine gestured towards the blue spark, who hummed with a barely contained electrical energy. Voltage, was to put it mildly, hammered. He tilted back another bottle, the contents disappearing in a few quick gulps. If his body wasn't constantly generating and dissipating power, he probably would have succumbed to the alcohol poisoning hours ago. Yeah, sure. He hiccuped, his attention fleeting and clearly drunk. Circuit, the Sparkette marked by a vibrant yellow scar that split her face, clapped Cinder on the back. "You suggesting the Crusher Corps take an actual break for once? Like that'll ever happen. We've got houses to build." A low chuckle rumbled through the group, a sound rarely heard from these hardened warriors. Rotor, the largest of the sparks, gestured his own half-empty bottle towards Void at the edge of the skeleton of a town, cradling his baby in his arms. "What do you make of our so-called protector? Looks kinda puny for such a title." Gizmo, settling back into her makeshift wooden seat, considered the newcomer. "Hard to say, old friend. But I think we, of all people, should know that looks don't paint the whole picture. I will say, though, he is kind of cute." Circuit rolled her eyes. "Really? I've seen better." The male sparks of the group all let out a collective huff. Cinder then silenced the brewing debate with a raised hand. "Whatever our opinions on Mr. Novason may be, we gotta understand that he's as much of a commander now as Lady Rosalind. Besides..." Her gaze softened as she watched Void gently bounce the baby in his arms, the little one erupting in a fit of giggles. Cinder watched on, a gentle smile growing more upon her face for finally seeing a sense of peace and innocence for once. "I think it's safe to say he's got a good heart. We don't see many of those nowadays." She raised her own bottle high. "Cheers! To leaving behind one shitty life, to moving on to maybe a less shittier future." A roar of agreement erupted from the Crusher Corps. They raised their bottles in salute, each taking long, satisfying swigs. The fire crackled, the liquor burned, and for the first time in a long time, a genuine sense of hope filled them all. As the party pulsed on, Atlas and Evelyn found solace in a quiet corner, perched upon a sturdy support beam of their unfinished home. Atlas held Evelyn securely in his lap. His forelegs embraced her, the soft metal warming her sides as her tail affectionately curled around his waist. Below them, the joyous occasion continued. One figure in particular caught Alice's attention. A larger spark, his skin a muted shade of gray, entertained the crowd. Primal feet grounded him, while sharp, curved horns punctuated his head. Colors of faded reds, blues, and greens swirled across his armored form, looking ragged and beat. He held a smile on his face and juggled several smaller sparks with impressive strength, using his clawed hands and the sharp tips of his tail in a brilliant display of show. "Ha! Look at Blaze go! Go on, buddy, yeah!" Alice exclaimed, his voice brimming with amusement. while he felt Evelyn shift closer against him. She murmured, her response lacking its usual enthusiasm. Alice's brow furrowed with concern. He gently maneuvered Evelyn upright, his large frame still cradling her. The soft purple hue emanating from her visor painted a melancholy picture in the dim moonlight. "Hey, what's wrong, babe?" he asked, his tone laced with tenderness. Evelyn sighed softly, her gaze drifting down to the jubilant scene below.
"It's nothing. Just... Mr. Cogson should have been here. I just haven't been able to shake the look he had when Talos..."
She trailed off, her voice heavy with unspoken grief.
"He was such a sweet spark. He didn't deserve the..."
Alice's heart ached for her. He tightened his hold, gently nuzzling his forehead against her visor. "Yeah, you're right. He was one of the best." A silence fell between them, broken only by the distant music and the crackling of the fires. Alice took a deep breath, drawing strength from Evelyn's presence. "Hey, if what Void said he saw before being reborn is anything to go by, I'm willing to bet he's here in spirit. Hell, all of them who had died probably are." He gestured towards the joyful throng below.
"You think so?"
Evelyn asked, her fingers idly playing with the beaded necklace that adorned Alice's neck. "Positive." Determination hardened Alice's gaze. He reached out, gently popping open Evelyn's face mask, exposing her delicate features to the cool night air. "This is where our lives truly start, my love. Whatever troubles you face, I'll be there to help you. I promise." A gentle blush, a soft, warm glow bloomed across Evelyn's face. She met Alice's emerald gaze, her eyes filled with a depth of love and gratitude. "I love you, Scrapeson," she whispered, her vocal cords still slightly scorched from the night that had never fled from any spark's mind. "As do I, Scorch's daughter," he replied, his voice husky with emotion. He leaned in, and their lips met in a tender kiss, a silent promise of enduring love. The moment, however, was abruptly shattered by a dramatic groan from below. "Really? In front of everyone?" Jessica's voice boomed, laced with mocking outrage. The nearby sparks erupted in laughter from her outcry, adding to the joyous chaos of the party. The cacophony of the celebration pressed in on Pofnu, a swirling vortex of light and noise that threatened to overwhelm her senses. She clutched her soda tightly, the condensation cool against her palm, a small anchor in the overwhelming sea of sparks. Each burst of light, each cheer echoed in her large ears. Taking a tentative step back, she hoped to find a silver of quiet, a moment to breathe, but her heel caught on something unseen. A surprised "oof" escaped her lips as she stumbled, her back connecting with something solid. Turning with a nervous fluster, she found herself face to face with another spark, seemingly around her own age. It wasn't just any spark, but the one adorned in a curious, sci-fi themed rabbit suit. The spark's blue visor, expressive eyes met hers, a glint of recognition flickering within them both. Nearby, looming like a metallic behemoth, was a set of contraptions that looked alarmingly like giant cannons. "Ugh, my bad," Pofnu blurted out, her voice laced with apology. The rabbit-suited spark grinned, an easy, disarming expression. "Hey, no sweat, my fuzzy, furry comrade. It's a wild party. No need to apologize." A hand then extended towards her. "Pofnu, right?" the spark had asked, her tone friendly. "Oh, yes. Abby, correct?" Pofnu replied, relief washing over her as she shook the offered hand. The grip was firm and confident. "Please, call me Abs." Abby greeted back, then returned her attention to the massive cannon, her gaze filled with focused intensity. "So, Pofnu ventured, Her curiosity spiked. Why are you setting up this doomsday device-looking thing? She couldn't help but notice the unmistakable etchings of a Nova rune within the large barrel, a symbol that hinted at considerable power. "Oh, this hotshot?" Abby exclaimed with a flourish, gesturing to the cannon with an enthusiastic wave of her hand. "It's for the fireworks!" She reached up and then unclasped her helmet, taking it off with a sigh of relief. Pofnu watched in fascinated surprise as a cascade of shiny, vibrant pink hair tumbled free, framing a pair of equally bright pink eyes that sparkled with energy. "Upon the flick of a switch, spark essence will fuel this baby's motor rotors. Then it'll be a party!" Abby punctuated her explanation with a rock and roll gesture, flashing the rock out gesture with her fingers. Pofnu couldn't help but chuckle. The girl's enthusiasm was infectious. "I see," she said, tilting her head. A feeling, warm and unfamiliar, began to bloom within her chest. "Do you need any help?" she offered, extending a hand, hoping that this encounter might be the start of something special, the beginning of a new friendship. The revelry pulsed on from the unfinished town like a vibrant heartbeat, a stark contrast to the solitary figure perched on a fallen log at the edge of the woods. Rune. He sat alone, his back to the boisterous celebration. He meticulously tinkered with a loose plate on his arm, the metal cold against his touch. It was armor he'd worn since the Purge, a relic of a life he was struggling to reconcile with the present. A sigh escaped his lips, a puff of white vapor forming out in the frigid air. He began to tighten the arm plate, a familiar ritual of comfort and introspection. But before he could delve into his deep thoughts, a sudden sharp sting of cold against his back startled him. "Duh! What the?" Anger flared in his voice as he whirled around. Standing there, with a mischievous glint in her crimson eyes, was the sparkette from the other day that pulled him back. Fasma, his sparkmate. A clump of snow dripped from her hand, the culprit of his icy assault. The sight of her, though, quickly doused the fire of his annoyance. "What are you doing all the way out here by yourself?" Fasma asked, her voice a soft counterpoint to the distant shouts and music. She walked over and gracefully settled beside him on the fallen log. "The party's still young. We want to see you." Rune glanced at her, then out at the snow-dusted forest. Another sigh escaped him, this one heavier and laced with weariness. I'm just not feeling up to it tonight." He nervously fidgeted with the arm plate, the metal clinking softly in the silence. Fasma didn't press him. Instead, she tilted her head upwards, her gaze tracing the silvery arc of the moon hanging in the clear night sky. "Are you feeling remorseful for your actions yesterday?" The question hung in the air, gentle but probing. Rune finally stopped his nervous tinkering. He reached inside his cape and pulled out 2 faded photographs then. "Half and half," he admitted, his voice low. "I shouldn't have burst out like that. It's just that kid claimed some bold things." Rune began, his voice softening. "But Astrofel's right." He glanced down at the images in his hand. "Nova Sun has got the light in his eyes, as the old tales say. No other spark I've met has such luminescence. I guess I'm just struggling to understand how someone so young could accomplish so much. Something we sparks all failed to do. To take those monsters down." Fasma leaned closer, recognizing the photographs. One showed a smiling couple, Rune's parents. The other depicted a group of younger figures, a brother and a close friend, lost to the chaos of their past. "You're just wishing they were here, aren't you?" Fasma said softly, her hand gently covering Rune's free one. "Wishing a lot of people were here, Fasma." Rune confessed, his voice thick with emotion. He carefully tucked the photos back into his cape. We barely met all these guys last week, and now we're just settling here on this mud rock? He ran a hand through his horns, frustration evident in his movements. It's just been a lot to take in. So many changes in such a short period of time. He trailed off, gripping his head as a sudden crescendo of cheers erupted from Little Salvaheim. The first fireworks, bursts of vibrant color against the inky sky, were being launched from the nearby city, painting the night with fleeting brilliance. The display seemed to amplify Rune's inner turmoil. Fasma squeezed his hand, her touch grounding him. Hey, let's go for a walk to ease that mind of yours. These woods seem nice enough. Pretty snow. Looks like a trail even. She gestured towards the dark tree line, where the snow shimmered under the moonlight. Rune hesitated for a moment, and a small, reluctant nod came from his head. What the hell, sure. He rose to his feet, his armor creaking slightly, and followed his sparkmate into the silent embrace of the woods, leaving the noise and light of the celebration behind. The snow crunched softly under their boots as they ventured deeper, seeking solace in the quiet peace of the night. Okay, everyone. Seems like the show is about to start. Queen Rosalind announced, her voice ringing with joyous authority. All eyes, a pool of colors and hues, turned towards her. Void felt the collective sense of anticipation released from him and his friends. Jida, her hand intertwined with Jay's smaller one, sat beside him, radiating a warmth that eased the lingering anxieties that clung to Void like shadows. On his right, Kor, Sika, and Joby sat at his side. Across from them, on Jida's side, were Nock, Kot, and the rest of those from Earth, their faces alight with curiosity and excitement. Void surveyed the group, a swell of emotion rising in his chest. It was a scene of unadulterated joy, pure, unburdened happiness. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the shadows seemed to have retreated, replaced by a vibrant, almost tangible hope. Doubts and fears that usually gnawed at him had been quieted, their voices drawn out by the infectious enthusiasm of the sparks. Talking with them, sharing stories and laughters, had been strangely therapeutic. He felt a tremor of anxiety, a residue of past traumas, but it was significantly fainter, almost ignorable. Turning to Jida, he saw a similar expression mirrored on her face, a blend of awe and profound contentment. They shared a knowing smile, a silent acknowledgement of the momentousness of the occasion. A soft laugh escaped them, a quiet bubble of happiness, and they nuzzled foreheads, Jay giggling in unrestrained delight, their connection a beacon in their gathering dusk. Abby, you may begin. Rosalind's voice, laced with anticipation, cut through the comforting silence. She gestured towards the pink spark standing beside Pofnu, both looking excited. You ready? Abby chirped, her voice brimming with youthful energy. Ready as I'll ever be, the fox declared, a spark of playful glee in her voice. Together, they approached the large, gleaming cannons, their surfaces humming with light and power. With ease, they flicked a switch. An audible hum resonated through the air as the cannons sprang to life, their barrels, along with smaller ones, glowing with an internal light. Then, with a powerful whoosh, they unleashed their payload. Large balls of pure spark essence, each shimmering with a unique color and shade. The spheres of light ascended rapidly, piercing the darkening sky like colorful comets. As they reached their apex, they exploded in a breathtaking display of radiant energy, scattering into a myriad of sparkling fragments. Slowly, deliberately, the fragments coalesced, forming the intricate shapes of Nova runes against the backdrop of the starlit canvas. Gasps of wonder rippled through the crowd. Sparks and humans, alien and familiar faces, all looked up and shared awe at the mesmerizing spectacle unfolding above them. The vibrant lights painted the night with hope, casting a warm golden hue upon their faces, a tangible promise of a brighter future. For that moment, bathed in the ethereal glow of the Nova runes, all felt the weight of the past lift, replaced by the buoyant light of possibility. Happy New Year's, Void. Jida said, giving him a kiss. Happy New Year's, Jida. The spark replied as his eyes shimmered a beautiful yellow shine. The sky above Aurora was now a canvas ablaze. Hundreds of fireworks exploded in a riot of color, its citizens turning their faces upwards in awed silence. But amidst the encore of light, a tear formed, a blood-red rift, hidden by the vibrant chaos, open above the river that bisected the city. Its swirling edges, like a wound in the fabric of reality, went unnoticed, lost in the visual assault of the fireworks. From the crimson tear, 5 objects hurtled towards the earth. Comets, each leaving a trail of crimson smoke that dissipated quickly in the night air. They plummeted towards the unsuspecting city, finally impacting the river with a series of muffled splashes. Beneath the surface, the water roiled from an unseen energy. The forms that had plunged into the river began to reshape, morphing and coalescing as if clay were being molded by an ancient invisible hand. Then, a sudden burst of light, red, yellow, white, orange, and blue, pulsed from the depths, illuminating the inky water from below. Moments later, something breached the surface. The beings had transformed into something akin to sharks, their sleek bodies cutting through the water with purpose. Their dorsal fins, crafted from their crystalline spark crest, sliced through the surface of the water. Each fin was marked with a bold bent stripe of their respective body color, a stark and unsettling detail. On the bridge overlooking the river, a young boy, a bullhorn, clutched at his mother's hand. "Mama, look! They're sharks!" he exclaimed, his voice barely audible above the cacophony of the fireworks. His mother, a red flipside human, glanced down, a smile playing on her lips. "What? Honey, there are no sharks in the water?" Her words trailed off, the smile fading as she saw what her son pointed at. 5 glowing fins were gliding silently beneath the bridge, heading towards the less populated fringes of the city. A chill snaked down her spine. What the hell?" she muttered, the glowing colors within the fins sending a tremor of unease through her. The 5 shapes neared a deserted, sandy beach at the edge of the city. As they reached the shallows, their shark forms shattered. The water erupted in a spray as countless mechanical shards, like a swirling swarm of mechanical locusts, burst forth and reformed upon the sand. The new forms pulsed with the same unsettling light, casting long, distorted shadows across the deserted beach.
"Wardens, we have arrived."
A powerful voice resonated, belonging to the red figure, Hatos. He surveyed his siblings, noticing their varying degrees of curiosity and disdain.
"Why the hell did Father send us to a city? This place reeks of poverty."
The blue one sneered, her gaze sweeping over the dilapidated buildings in the southern district.
"If he was able to sense another matter birth, this is where he sent us to find it."
Hatos countered, his tone firm. He shifted his gaze to the spectacle of fireworks overhead.
"Perhaps Matira is here. Baby, she is. Yes, yes."
The orange warden, his voice booming, boasted, a glowing mohawk atop his head flashing brighter with each word.
"If she was here, there is a chance,"
the white one stated, his voice booming as well.
"When we find her, we breach her holy seal and set the banished free."
As those words were shared, they all turned their attention to a series of particularly large fireworks exploding above them. To their amusement, they recognized the intricate designs, large, stylized Nova runes.
"There,"
Hato said, a predatory smile spreading across his face. In perfect unison, the 5 figures shattered once more, their bodies dissolving into a cloud of metallic dust and particles, becoming indistinguishable from the smoke and haze that hung in the air. Invisible, they drifted on the wind, becoming one with the city's chaotic energy. The hunt had begun, and judging by Hatos' smile before dissipation, the end was rapidly approaching. The back half of the frosty woods remained untouched by the New Year's revelry. While the sky above continued to erupt in dazzling displays of fireworks, painting the snow-dusted trees in fleeting strokes of crimson, gold, and violet, Rune and Fasma walked in comfortable silence. Gentle snowflakes drifted from the inky sky, muting the world around them. So, you're telling me Hopper actually ate a fly? Rune spoke aloud mid-conversation, his voice carrying on the crisp air. Fasma's answering laughter was bright and cheerful. Saw it with my own 2 eyes. Little bugger snapped it right out of the air. The pair continued their stroll, the soft crunch of their boots the only sound besides the distant booms and crackles of the celebration. Weird kid. Rune gently chuckled. Guess he's really embracing his elements. They stopped, heads tilted back to watch a particularly spectacle burst of emerald green and sapphire blue. Well, Fasma sighed, a smile playing on her lips. Ain't that just beautiful? She laced her fingers with runes, the warmth a comforting contrast to the biting cold. Been a long while since we've seen some fireworks, huh? Rune nodded, turning to look at his sparkmate. Her face, illuminated by the fleeting bursts of light, was etched with a peaceful contentment he hadn't seen in too long. I guess it is, he agreed. Minus my headache, I think I'm willing to actually head back now. I really needed this breather. Fasma squeezed his hand in an understanding gesture. Alright, let's just head back the way we came. Just gotta follow the... Her words suddenly died in her throat. A sharp snap, like a twig breaking underfoot, echoed from the darkness beyond the ring of firework light. They froze, their earlier tranquility shattered, eyes wide with sudden alertness. They scanned the surrounding woods. Did you hear that? Fasma asked, her voice tight. Before either could react, a deep, resonant voice boomed from the shadows, silencing them both.
Where are you returning to, little sparks?
Rune and Fasma whirled around, adrenaline surging through their veins. Their hands moved instinctively, summoning their weapons. Rune conjured a sharp, elegant sword crafted from glowing green spark matter that pulsed with inner light. Fasma released 2 crimson nova blades, connected to their hilts by shimmering ethereal chains, allowing for both close quarters combat and ranged attacks. Who's out there? Rune called out, his voice firm despite the tremor of fear that threatened to creep in. Show yourself! What emerged from the darkness defied explanation. 5 mechanical wolves, each the size of a small car, slunk into the clearing, their eyes gleaming with an eerie, unnatural light. One glowed a menacing red, another a sickly yellow, one a cold blue, another a sterile white, and the last a flickering orange. These were creatures not of nature, but of cold, unfeeling metal. Sharp spikes adorned their bodies, and drool of their respective colors dripped from their snapping metallic maws, their breath clouding in the frigid air. Rune? Fasma breathed, her voice laced with worry. She began to spin one of her nova blades, the chain singing a low, deadly song as it melted the snow beside her. Who are you? Rune demanded, conjuring a shimmering Novarune shield at his side. What do you want? He asked, proceeding to fall silent to the sight of what looked to be crossed-out spark emblems adorning the wolves' chests. Nothing much. The yellow wolf snarled, her voice a grating mechanical growl. Just searching for someone you may be acquainted with. The blue one added. Matterbeth! Where is the Matterbeth? Barked the orange wolf, his voice a disjointed, static-filled rumble. Matterbirth? Void? Phasma's eyes widened, a flicker of understanding and dread crossing her features as she spoke. Void? Rune whispered, his voice barely audible, confused by what the wolves were getting at. The red wolf stopped, its crimson eyes locking on theirs. Void. It repeated, the name reverberating and lingering with an unnatural power. That's the name, isn't it? Then, in a horrifying display of technological transformation, the red wolf reared up on its hind legs, its form shattering apart into a whirlwind of metal and sparks. The pieces quickly reformed, coalescing into a towering figure that eclipsed even the massive wolves. Hatos, his metallic stature now even more imposing, his presence radiating an aura of cold, calculating menace. Phasma, get behind me! Rune roared, his green eyes blazing with protective fury as they met Hatos' glossy red optics. Hatos' voice and chuckle was a low, guttural growl that sent shivers down their spines. Arm cannons emerged from his forearms, their barrels gleaming with malevolent intent, while smaller turrets sprouted from his shoulders. We don't have time for introductions, little sparks. We can do this the easy way, or the hard way. Hatos growled, the wardens, the mechanical wolves, circling the couple, trapping them in a deadly cage of metal and teeth. Take us to the Matterbirth. We'll have to find our way to him ourselves. Phasma, her fear momentarily overridden by outrage, lunged forwards, lashing out with one of her Nova Blades. In a move too swift to follow, Hatos raised his hand, allowing for the blade to pierce his palm. He didn't flinch, didn't even seem to register the attack. To Phasma and Rune's mounting horror, they watched as the metal of his hand flowed like floating, crumbling sand, reforming and reshaping itself around the blade, his fingers grabbing it like living metallic snakes. You sparks, always the same. Too quick to temper, rash and predictable. It's a shame she favored you over the old, he said, his voice dropping with disdain. Visible steam trailed from his eyes, a sign of immense power he was about to unleash. As the fireworks pulsed on in a beautiful spectacle, all eyes in Little Salvaheim suddenly snapped towards the woods as a pulse of raw, red energy erupted from the trees, a thunderous boom that startled the slumbering wildlife and left an unsettling silence in its wake. Whoa! Jada cried, instinctively rising to her feet, her earlier joy replaced with a sense of shock. What the hell was that? Sika demanded, her voice sharp with alarm. The sparks below, their faces alight with joy only moments before, now mirrored her confusion. Shoot! Did we misfire? Abby asked, her brow furrowed with concern as she and Pofnu frantically checked the cannons. Definitely not. I don't see them scrapheads aiming at the trees. Gizmo shouted, the Crusher Corps standing beside her, their expressions now alert and wary. What the hell? Void muttered, his gaze fixed on the dissipating crimson glow. A collective gasp then swept through the crowd as two figures plummeted from the sky, clearly caught in the blast's wake. Rune and Fasma, steaming and bruised, crashed into the snowy banks bordering the river. They landed hard, rolling with angered and pained shouts before kneeling upright and breathless. Rune? Void and several others chirped out, their voices laced with concern. Simultaneously, others called out for Fasma. Instantly, the crowd surged forwards, converging on the two figures ejected from the heavens. What the heck just happened? Coco asked, her eyes wide with disbelief, as Void gestured for Jida and those beside her on the left to hold back. Rune! Void shouted again, leaping down the embankment with Core, finding a shared, worried reflected in Astrofel's face beside him at landfall. Together, they approached the fallen duo, who were slowly, painfully rising to their feet. Rune! Fasma! What happened? Queen Rosalind asked, her regal composure momentarily shattered by concern as she rushed to check on the injured. Get back! Rune yelled, shaking off his lingering effects of the blast. His eyes burned with intensity as he focused his gaze on the tree line. Someone. Something. He stuttered as red electricity buzzed up and down his arms. What? Chi-Chi questioned, glancing back and forth between Rune and the woods. We were attacked by a group of... I don't even know. We could barely... Fasma trailed off, her breath catching in her throat as she too stared intently at the woods. Barely what? What happened? Cinder pressed, taking a firm step forwards, her voice demanding answers. Confusion reigned. The Spark couple turned the Void, their eyes pleading. Novasun, you! Rune began, but before he could elaborate, Stella, who had been standing with the other non-Spark folk, pointed a finger at the woods, her eyes wide with an intensity that even made Greg uneasy. What the hell is that? Following her gaze, everyone's attention snapped back to the forest's edge. Emerging from the darkness, their forms outlined in a malevolent red glow, were Hatos and his grotesque, colorful siblings. A collective gasp of shock rippled through the crowd, both Sparks and human alike. Many instinctively took a step back, while a brave few moved forwards. Void, leading the charge, flanked by Rune, Fasma, and Astrofel, marching forwards with tense, curious looks. What the... Winona? What are those things? Please tell me you know them! Andy asked, their voice trembling with anxiety. A wave of unease washed over the field reporter, and the others from Earth, wondering as to what was approaching. The Goliath figures advanced slowly, wading through the icy river, their massive frames casting imposing shadows on the moon and fireworks light, swallowing and dwarfing everything in their path. What in Beezus' name? Jida muttered, her protective instincts kicking in. She pulled Jay closer, her fire and constellations flaring with heat. Rune? Who are those guys? Void asked, electricity crackling around his arms as dread began to arise in his heart. I was about to ask you the same thing. Rune replied grimly and angrily as the mechanical beast reached the riverbank, each step a heavy and deliberate blow. Hatos growled, his eyes scanning Void.
I thought you to be a bit bigger, but you're definitely the one.
Void's eyes pulsed with a golden light and confusion. Who are you? He asked, taking another step forward, unknowingly highlighting himself as the leader he was still uncertain about.
Are you Spark?
Core questioned from behind, his own white matter gift beginning the surge, guarding Sika and Joby.
You could say.
The White Warden hissed, its insectoid mouth clicking with anticipation. Void glanced over his shoulder, nodding subtly to Jida and those without powers to retreat. They began to move slowly, cautiously, when Hatos roared a command, snapping everyone's heads back towards him.
Kill them! All of them! We found him.
Before anyone could react, the Yellow Warden lunged forwards, unhinging her jaw and unleashing a deafening, supercharged scream that ripped through the air, blasting the entire group of Sparks backwards, all of them. A collective uproar of screams and shouts erupted as the blast tore through them, extinguishing fires and toppling nearby structures. Jida, thinking quickly, worked herself, Jay, and the others beside her out of the direct path of the blast, saving them from the worst of the impact. Foot and Astrophel rolled and slid across the ground, finally coming to a jarring stop. Many of their fellow sparks scattered around them.
Ugh! What the hell?
Void cried, his sparkborn armor materializing, forming his blue bullet gear. Beside him, Astrophel deployed his own battle helmet, a sleek, samurai-inspired design adorned with a unique symbol on his left side.
Ugh! What in Matira's name?
Cinder shouted, scrambling to her feet with the Crusher Core. Core and the other initial survivors followed suit, powering up their sparkborn gifts. On the fringes, many of the sparks who could stand did so. Chi-Chi, Jaden, and a few others Void didn't recognize, joining the fray.
The Queen's hurt!
The spider-like spark called, as Rosalind, along with several other sparks, were knocked out cold from the blast.
What do you think you tin cans are doing?
Greg growled, standing tall and glaring menacingly from behind his glasses.
Enacting simple retribution,
Hato stated, as his siblings launched several beaded-like objects from their arms. Upon impact, these beads exploded into swirling dust shards, reforming into grotesque, goblin-like creatures on the banished lands. Man-sized mechanical horrors with razor-sharp blades and blood-red eyes. You've got to be kidding me, Fasma said, exchanging a grim look with Rune as they readied their weapons.
Matter birth void. By the will of the banished, you are to submit to the claws of his hand. Come with us, or face the end like your fellow sparks.
Hados declared, charging his cannons. The will of the what? Void replied, glancing back at his found family, his eyes conveying a silent plea. Get the hell out of here.
Boss, what do we do?
Abby suddenly said, pulling herself and Pofnu out of the rubble. Void's heart pounded in his chest. He didn't understand who these banished were, or what they wanted. But the threat the wardens posed was terrifyingly clear. As the image of Jay flashed in his mind, his resolve hardened. It was enough to trigger the deployment of his helmet. Defend Little Salvaheim! If you cannot fight, hide! Void ordered, his voice ringing with authority, as the smaller, mechanical monsters began their relentless assault, with the wardens marching ominously behind them. The first strike was Void's, a blur of motion. He lunged, his billy club snapping open, its energized end snaking around Hatos' neck. With a sharp yank, he pulled, using the momentum to launch himself towards the Crimson Warden. A crackle of energy surged through his leg, culminating in a devastating kick that slammed into Hatos, sending the Warden staggering back. Beside him, Fasma danced with deadly grace, her energy blades blurring as she engaged the Blue Warden. As she did this, Rune gripped onto Phasma's chains, allowing himself to be hurled towards the fray. Phasma's blades ripped through the Blue Warden's chest, and in a brutal display of teamwork, Rune followed through, plunging his own blade into the Warden's skull as he sailed past. The Sapphire Warden, however, simply cackled. The combined assault barely fazed her. She unfurled her cables, engaging both Rune and Fasma in a chaotic 2-on-1 battle, the air shimmering with the clash of their powers. On another front, Astrophel moved with impossible speed, a blue and silver streak against a swarm of smaller mechanical beasts. His blade flashed, dissecting the creatures with practiced ease. Spotting his target, the Orange Warden, he lunged, aiming a precise strike. But the Warden was ready. He deployed a ball and chain mace, swinging it in a wide arc towards Astrophel, accompanied by a high-pitched screeching cackle. With a fluid duck and roll, Astrophel avoided the blow. He then summoned a dark blue Nova Rune, slamming it into the back of the Warden's head to try and stun it,
Too slow.
He quipped, expecting the mechanical monstrosity to crumble. Instead, the orange warden contorted, disassembling and reforming into a cheetah-like creature, its eyes glowing with furious intensity, a snarling growl rumbling from its metallic throat.
Not fast for you! Not fast enough for you, huh?
It snarled, coiling the pounce. Astrofel's blue eyes widened to the bizarre sight. Okay, that's not the reply I was expecting, he muttered, bracing himself as the transformed warden lunged. Across the battlefield, the white warden huffed, its form rippling, solidifying into a mechanical rhino and charging directly at Core. The ground trembled with each powerful stomp.
Sika, get Joby out of here!
Core bellowed, summoning his light matter in a full, shimmering contrast of pure energy. He met the rhino's charge head-on, a clash of titans echoing through the woods. Reacting instantly, Sika scooped up Joby and bolted for the dense woods. Those who knew Core surged forwards to aid him. Atlas swiftly leapt onto the rhino's back, his clawed feet tearing into its mechanical hide and shooting into him through its lower turrets.
We got your back, Core!
He roared. Evelyn, sleek and deadly, flanked the charging beast, her bladed tail slashing against its legs. Lee, now clad back in her shimmering sparkboard armor, joined the fray, her energized stinger cutting through the air. Together, this trio hacked and slashed, a coordinated assault designed to bring the behemoth down. Harmony then appeared, unleashing a wave of dissonant music, disrupting the warden's systems with its chaotic vibrations. With a guttural roar, the warden shifted again, its form becoming a grotesque amalgamation of metal and fury, tossing Core, Atlas, Evelyn, Lee, and Harmony aside like ragdolls.
Insects!
It bellowed before unleashing a devastating energy blast, scattering the heroes across the rising battlefield. Within the snow, chaos reigned. Sparks, capable of fighting, stood their ground, a desperate line against the relentless tide of mechanical creatures. From a distance, Kronos, his face grim, escorted the queen, princess, and the younger Sparks to safety. This included Pofnu. Amidst this, Cinder slammed her battle helmet into place, while activating an electric sniper from her back. As she took hold of its deadly frame, she plucked one of the glowing vials from her chest, locking it into the weapon's ammo slot. An electric charge, 6 shots per vial. With breathtaking speed and precision, she unleashed a volley of shots, each one a miniature lightning bolt, taking down 3 mechanical creatures in a single burst. Cinder rolled to avoid a leaping monster, watching as it fell into Circuit's grasp. Without pause, Circuit deployed a pair of Nova Blades, executing a swift, martial arts maneuver that bisected the creature mid-air.
You just had to speak about things being peaceful!
Voltage roared, weaving through the fray, his drunken manner now replaced by focused intensity. 2 electrified whips snapped from his arms, crackling with power. He swung them with practiced skill, the momentum charging them into a dazzling display of light. He attacked, a whirlwind of electrified leather and raw power, disassembling monsters, sending heads and limbs flying. Behind him, Turbine moved with the unsettling grace of a spider, his 4 extended arms firing off a barrage of rounds that synchronized with Cinder's onslaught.
Rotor, catch!
Turbine then yelled, flinging one of the smaller creatures towards his hulking green ally. Rotor caught it without hesitation. With a brutal yank, he ripped the creature's head from its body, the spine still attached. Rotor then began to swing the gruesome trophy, the spiked head a devastating flail that smashed through the ranks of drones. His free arm activated then, a scattergun-like weapon forming, blasting away enemies as the ground became slick with a misty red smoke. With echoing footsteps, the Yellow Warden advanced, seemingly intent on reaching Jida and the other humans. Gizmo, her eyes blazing with defiance, took notice. "Oh no, you don't!" the short Sparkette cried, tugging on the strings of a backpack she had been wearing. Instantly, a battle body unfolded around her, her height tripling to rival Motor's mass. Large arms, wheeled clawed feet, and an impressive grabbing hand tail emerged from her back. A steel helmet then enclosed around her head, making her seem tiny in comparison to the massive frame. With a roar of gears and hydraulics, Gizmo charged, her colossal form colliding with the yellow warden, a clash of titans that sent sparks flying. Nearby, the large spark, Blaze, tore through the smaller enemies with raw ferocity, clawing, punching, and biting, his tail a living blade. He savored the battle, a primal grin etched across his face. As the fight intensified, he slammed his helmet into place and drew a massive sword, transforming into a terrifying warrior that one could have viewed from a forgotten era. Ejida and the other humans scrambled for cover, desperately trying to reach a nearby location station. "This is crazy!" Andy shouted as Sella pulled out a pistol and began firing at the monstrous attackers, deploying a helmet of her own to everyone's surprise. Ellie and Matthew followed suit, while Jay, overwhelmed by the chaos, erupted in tears. "Really wishing Jet wasn't at the tractor convention tonight. He'd be really useful right now!" Todd added, his voice tinged with desperation. "So would Sarvin Tucker!" Knock cried. "We gotta get you guys and the kid out of here!" Greg shouted, his body shimmering with a green aura as he did his best to fight off the monsters. Jida comforted Jay, holding him close, and then she looked to Winona and the others near the portal. "Get him out of here! I gotta help the others!" Jida pleaded, handing the baby to Winona. Cosmic energy swirled around her, forming celestial armor over her body, a helmet encasing her head. "Please! I trust you all with his life!" The angelic warrior begged, receiving silent nods of agreement. "Whoa! I was only kidding! You've got an actual firehead! Awesome!" Greg exclaimed as Jida warped the others to the location station, making sure they got through and away from the scene. "How well do you fight?" Jida asked, her body radiating heat. "Sweetheart, I was about to ask you the same thing." Greg replied as his body suddenly transformed into a glowing green spectral dragon-like formation. His mouth elongated into a beak-like shape. A red line burned across the sides of his body and down the two large arms and hands. Yet, Greg's glasses remained perched on his face, a testament to his quirky personality. "Whoa! I guess we all have a gimmick these days," Jida added as the two allies suddenly blasted into the fight. Side by side, they became balls of energy, clashing against enemies in rapid succession, looking like comets of orange and green. "Oh yeah!" Greg cried as he gave the struggling spark some well-needed backup. With a powerful punch, Void slammed an electrical fist in the Hatos, followed by strikes from his Nova Blades. "I don't know who you are or what you want with me, but you need to leave!" Void shouted, dodging and weaving around the warden, ducking between his legs and avoiding cannon blasts. "Not until you comply!" Hatos roared, seizing Void by the neck. Cinder, surveying the battlefield, saw what was happening and shouted, "Novasun, catch!" she cried, noticing his electricity. With these words, she ripped off one of her rifle charges from her chest and hurled it towards Void. He caught it, sensing the potent energy within. Crushing the charge in his hand, Void felt electricity surge through his body, his seams and glowing body sections now shimmering gold. "Yeah, sorry, big guy, but I don't usually listen to strangers," he declared before unleashing an energized fist in the Hatos. The resulting energy pulse was so powerful, it sent Hatos, Astrophel, Rune, Fasma, Jida, Greg, and several nearby sparks flying back. Laying together, the warrior stood, bruised but unbroken. "You good?" Jida asked, her hair blazing. "I'm fine. Where's Jay and Pofnu?" Void asked, his eyes scanning the battlefield. "They're safe," Jida assured as Hatos, the blue warden, and the orange warden closed in. "I've never faced any enemy like this one before." Astrophel huffed, his coat torn from the rabid fight with the cheetah. "Shape-shifting spark-like beings? Is this Matira's work?" Jida asked, noticing the split crest of the wardens. "Out of all the stories and legends I have heard, the only thing in regards to shapeshifters is merely found in old texts. Simply legends. As far as we're aware, this is something else entirely," Fasma stated, her voice grim. Hatos beckoned them forward, a silent challenge. "Whatever they are, we can't let them beat us," Void said, readying his billy clubs. "We win this by working as a team," he shouted, his blue bullet persona shining through. "On me!" he yelled, leaping forwards with everyone at his side. Yet, before they could engage, Hatos charged up, his body humming like a spark's horns. Before anyone could react, he unleashed a pulse so massive it sent them all flying into the air, scattering them all into several directions. The world swam in and out of focus for Void. Fleeting glimpses of a star-strewn sky, dazzling fireworks exploding in vibrant bursts, and the dark, looming silhouette of a snow-laden forest flickered before his eyes. The sharp impact of his body hitting the snow-covered ground jolted him fully awake. Twigs snapped beneath him as he rolled, the momentum carrying him into a shaky, upright position. With a surge of adrenaline, Void finished the roll, using the motion to propel himself back to his feet. He retracted his clubs, the metal folding back into the recesses of his being, and summoned forth his father's spear in their place. The familiar weight of the weapon grounded him, offering a small measure of comfort. He tightened his grip on the shaft, his metal knuckles white. He scanned his surroundings. He was far from Little Salvaheim, completely alone and vulnerable in the depths of the silent, snow-covered woods. Panic began to claw at his throat, his heart hammering against his ribs. "China!" he cried, his voice crackling with fear and desperation. "Core!" he called again, the sound swallowed by the vast emptiness of the forest. A sudden rustling in the trees made him jump. Shadows danced along the tree line, playing tricks on his eyes. Anxiety surged, threatening to overwhelm him.
Your soul. It radiates a familiar scent.
Hatos' voice echoed through the woods, chilling Void to the bone. It sounded both ancient and menacing, a resonance that vibrated deep within his very being. The disembodied voice forced Void to spin around wildly, desperately searching for the source.
It reeks of home, a realm that we have not seen in years, billions, trillions of years.
The voice continued, its tone laced with a chilling nostalgia. Void fought against the growing feeling of dread, struggling to maintain some semblance of composure.
Interesting. They fixed you, didn't they?
The monster voice asked, a hint of curiosity underlying its menace.
They, the Sparkborns, they died and reforged in the you. I can smell it from your soul chamber. Fascinating. Half the work is already done.
Now, Void could see them. Wolves. Not ordinary wolves, but mechanical shadows given form, darting between the trees, their eyes glowing with an unholy light. They were hunting him, stalking him like a rabbit caught in a snare.
Even more intriguing. Your blood. It reeks of an old force, the same as hers.
Suddenly, a blue, glowing wolf exploded from the shadows, moving with terrifying speed and violence. She slashed across Void's side, tearing a deep gash into his metal flesh. He cried out in pain as the wolf disappeared back into the darkness.
You're the child of the devil, the Iron Maiden. I knew I recognized those moves.
The voice continued. An orange blur flashed past, raking its claws across Void's leg, forcing him to drop to one knee, a searing pain erupting through him. What are you? Void stammered, feeling the agonizing burn of red matter, the most potent and violent form, stinging his skin.
However, how much of you remains? Are you truly this void they speak of? Or are you just a hollow shell of your former self, puppeted by them?
The question hung in the air, thick with malice. A flash of white-hot pain ripped through Void's front, causing him to drop his spear, the polished gold clattering against the frozen ground. Void fell forwards on his hands in the snow, his strength fading away.
What are you?
He whispered, weakly, the red matter poisoning him, numbing his senses. Void then felt a hot breath on the top of his head. And then, with agonizing slowness, he craned his neck to look upwards. The wolf-like face of Hatos' form loomed over him, the predator's eyes burning in the void with an unnerving intelligence.
Tell me, do you know the tale of the ship of Theseus?
Hatos asked, his voice a low growl as Void struggled to remain conscious. The what? The spark managed to croak again, weakly reaching for his discarded spear.
It's a rather peculiar thing to ponder. Once, the ship was mighty, like all sea vessels. However, over time, her wood began to rot, resulting in the planks being replaced.
Hatos leaned closer, his sharp breath washing over Void's face. From the shadows, the eyes of his siblings gleamed, watching with silent intensity.
It begs the question, how much of that ship is the same ship if all of its parts are replaced? Is it the same vessel as before, or rather a new one entirely? Now, if you were reborn through them, how much of your old self remains? And how much have they taken hold of the old Void's place? Little food for thought, wouldn't you agree?
Void scowled, pain radiating through his body.
What are you getting at? He huffed. Just to make you ponder. Do you really think you're some kind of special little gift? You have no idea what tarnished shoes you have filled. If you knew the true extent of the legacy you now carry, you might as well cut yourself out of the position entirely. Unless you come with us.
Void shook his head, gathering the last vestiges of his energy.
I never...
Before he could finish the sentence, Hatos struck with brutal speed. The wolf's jaws clamped down on Void's right arm, the metal bone crunching under the immense pressure. Before Void could even scream, Hatos tore the limb clean off, leaving a ragged, torn wound that spewed blue blood into the snow. Void finally screamed, howling in agony.
We're not asking anymore,
Hatos said, swallowing Void's arm in a single gulp.
You will lead us to her, and you will help us set the banished free.
Hatos placed an enormous paw on Void's chest, pinning him to the ground and crushing him further into the snow.
Even if we have to rip you apart piece by piece until we get what we want.
Blue blood continued to gush from the gaping wound where Void's arm used to be. His eyes and the seams of his body flashed with erratic pulses of yellow energy as he convulsed in agony. Leaning down, Hatos moved to seize his other arm, but a sudden flash of steel erupted from the darkness. Void! Astrophel's voice sliced through the chilling silence. The spark landed with a thud, his katana already drawn. He then unleashed a blast of energy from the blade, sending Hatos flying backwards, the shockwave shattering the surrounding quiet. The wolf landed hard, reforming into his normal warden form. From behind Astrophel, a wave of sparks emerged, Jida and Core at the forefront, unleashing a barrage of energy blasts that forced the warden back. Void! Void! Jida shouted, her voice laced with raw panic.
Oh my god! Void!
Core joined in. Void lay in the snow, hyperventilating, his body shaking uncontrollably, his voice a forever strangled scream. Damn it! They don't know when to quit! We can't get them in full if they don't stay down! The blue warden snarled as the 5 of them began their retreat deeper into the woods, seeking cover from the relentless onslaught of the sparks.
Whatever. That's good for now,
Hados gruffed, wiping the blood from his lips.
We've acquired plenty of information for Father to digest. The Matterbirth is wounded, scared, confused. Let his fears swell within him. Let it tear him apart first. We will come for him when he least expects it.
Hados then grinned, his teeth bared in a predatory smile, as the energy blast tore gashes in his form.
Wardens, our work is drawing to a close. Soon, she will be ours, and the Empire will thrive, just as it was always meant to be.
Hados declared, as they all disappeared into the crimson maw of a rapidly opening-closing portal. As the portal vanished, some of the sparks cautiously advanced to investigate where the wardens had gone, while others rushed to aid Jida and Kor as they huddled over Void. Jida's frantic shouts seemed to dim, replaced by a sharp, high-pitched ringing in Void's ears. Everything felt numb, blurry, as if he were watching the scene unfolding through a thick fog. Even the sensation of being lifted didn't fully register in Void's mind. However, he did notice one thing. Deep within the shadows of the trees, as clear as crystal, was the being from his anxiety attack. It was there, watching him, twitching with a grotesque, unnatural rhythm, a horrifying demon ripped straight from his worst nightmares. And then, he heard a voice whisper into his mind. "Rest, sweetheart. Rest." A woman's voice, soft and kind. To these words, all Void could muster was a single, frail question. "Mom?" Before darkness embraced them.